Hey everybody, this week's Torah portion is Parshas Shmos, and in this week's Parsha, the Torah tells us as follows. It says that Vayigdal Moshe, Moses became big, and he went out to see what was doing with his fellow Jews. Now Moses had been raised in the palace of King Pharaoh, and when he became at a certain age, the Torah tells us he grew up, became big, and went out to see what was doing with his fellow Jewish people. Now, the Torah is the most expensive real estate on the planet. Any word in it is very calculated. God doesn't waste his time, obviously. So when we see a word that seems out of place or extra, we have to ask ourselves, why did God put it in there? What is he trying to teach us? And the words "and Moses became big" seem at face value to be extra. What does that mean that he became big? If it means he grew up, that's obvious. Obviously he grew up. We don't expect him to have gone out at age 2 to go see what was doing with his fellow Jews. So what exactly does the Torah mean by "and Moses became bigger"? Now, to understand this, we have to use a rule that we've said in the past, and that is that if you ever want to know what a word means in the Torah, or even in the Hebrew language, you have to look to where it is first used in the Torah. So when you want to know what the word big means, you look where else is that word in the Torah? At the first place in the Torah. And the first place we see that word is in reference to the sun and the moon. So the sun, when it is created, is called the bigger luminary. That uses the word gadol there, the big luminary, and the moon is called the small one, the katan, the small. Now, obviously, that doesn't refer to size, because everyone can tell that the sun is bigger than the moon. But what the Torah refers to, what it means when it says big and small in reference to the sun and the moon, is that the sun is the giver and the moon is the taker. The sun shines very bright. The moon takes that and reflects it. So the sun would be the giver, and the moon is the taker, which means the word big actually in Hebrew really means, at least in biblical Hebrew, the one who gives, and the word small, katan, means the one who takes. And what it means by Moses becoming big in our parsha is that Moses grew up and now started to become a giver. And the first thing he did to show that was go out and see, what can I do for my fellow Jews? And that is how we define big and small. Not in size, but in are you taking or are you giving? If you're a giver, you're big. If you're a taker, you're small. And this is actually why, by a circumcision, very interestingly, there is a custom that during the service, everyone says the following line, Zek katan gadoliyah, that this small child should become big. And obviously we're not referring to size again, because that's not much of a blessing, but what we're trying to say is that this child who is katan, who is small and is now a taker, all that a baby does is take, gadoliyah, one day, hopefully sooner than later, it will become big, it will become a giver, not just a taker. So that is what we bless a newborn child at the circumcision, that this child will go from being a taker to being a giver, and that is what all of us Jews aspire to be givers and not takers. And Hashem should help us that we should be able to do that in our own personal lives and become givers and not takers, and help our fellow Jews as Moses, our leader, did in this week's Torah portion. Everybody have a Shabbat Shalom.